People say that Florian Wirtz fell out of favour in the match against Manchester United, and indeed, if you look at every detail of that game, that assessment isn't wrong at all. This was supposed to be Florian Wirtz's game, the one where he could prove himself worthy of a contract worth over £100 million. At a time when Liverpool are in desperate need of a creative spark. A bridge between the midfield and the attack. Because tactically speaking, Manchester United's midfield isn't particularly strong. It's run by an aging veteran alongside a player who's naturally an attacking midfielder, yet still struggles to understand what it truly means to be a proper number 8. Like Bruno Fernandes, that should have been the area Florian Wirtz could fully exploit, a space where he could move freely, stretch the play, create openings, and dictate the tempo. But surprisingly, coach Arne Slot didn't place his trust in him for such a big match. That decision left many people puzzled, as it was almost like a statement that, at this moment, Slot no longer sees Florian Wirtz as the focal point in crucial matches. Perhaps the issue lies in trust, rather than ability. Florian Wirtz isn't bad, he still creates chances, still has flashes of brilliance, and remains a player with rare vision and technique. But in top-level football, trust can sometimes be even more valuable than talent. Once a coach feels that a player isn't performing exactly as expected within the system, maybe a split second late on the press or missing a burst at the right moment, that position can be replaced immediately. And it seems Florian Wirtz has fallen right into that spiral. It's not that he's been playing poorly, but rather that he doesn't quite fit Arne Slot's system. The bitter irony is that in the match against Manchester United, Liverpool failed precisely in the area where Florian Wirtz could have made a difference. Their midfield lacked a conductor, a connector, and just a bit of daring to play those passes that unlocked defenses. The things Florian Wirtz used to do at Leverkusen, those dribbles past 3 players, those shoulder turns to escape pressing, are no longer seen now. Not because he's lost that ability, but because he's no longer allowed to play that way. Slot chose safety, players who can run, defend, and follow tactical instructions, over one who thrives on creativity and instinct. Like Florian Wirtz. The sight of Wirtz sitting on the bench, watching the game slip away with a quiet gaze, felt like a symbol of how creative players are often suffocated within rigid, disciplined systems. It's a paradox. Liverpool spent over £100 million to bring in a genius, only to turn him into a bystander in big matches. And when fans see Florian Wirtz no longer trusted, they're not angry at him. They're angry at how a player who once amazed the entire Bundesliga now finds himself boxed in at Anfield. He still has his influence, but it's now confined to brief moments, a few isolated touches that aren't enough to change a game, nor enough to restore faith. And if we project Florian Wirtz's story onto a comparable example, the most fitting name right now would probably be Matheus Cunha at Manchester United. Because Cunha, too, is going through a similarly unproductive phase. 8 games have passed without a goal or an assist, yet the atmosphere around him isn't nearly as tense as what Wirtz is facing at Liverpool. There are 2 reasons for that. First, at Manchester United, no one ever placed their full trust in Cunha as a true conductor. He's seen as a cog in Amorim's system, not its soul. And second, while Cunha hasn't been explosive, his performances still make sense for his price tag. He presses aggressively, holds the ball well, moves intelligently, and brings positive energy to the attack. In other words, even without standout stats, Cunha is doing his job within a structure where he's not expected to be the centerpiece. Florian Wirtz's case, however, is entirely different. Liverpool brought him in to be the centerpiece of a revolution. They didn't spend over £100 million just to strengthen the squad. They spent it to rebuild their style of play around him. Slot shifted the system from a 4-3-3 to a 4-2-3-1 with a clear idea in mind. Wirtz would be the number 10, the spark, the orchestrator, the connector linking everything up front. When you buy a playmaker for that kind of money, you don't just expect him to play well, you expect magic. But Florian Wirtz hasn't delivered that yet. No goals, no assists, no moment of brilliance that makes the crowd gasp. And to Liverpool fans, that feels like a huge, unfinished crescendo in a symphony that's lost its rhythm. The unlucky part for Wirtz is that Liverpool are in a slump, 4 consecutive losses. In times like these, no club has the patience to wait for a new start to gradually settle in. The pressure to win, to recover immediately, makes long-term plans feel like a luxury. And that's why a question is starting to echo both inside the club and among analysts. Will Arne Slot stay faithful to the 4-2-3-1 system built around Florian Wirtz? Or will he be forced to revert to the traditional 4-3-3, the structure that kept Liverpool stable for years under Jurgen Klopp? If Slot does go back to 4-3-3, it would mean Florian Wirtz losing not just his central position on the pitch, but also his place at the heart of the club's project. And that's the real fear, because when a record-breaking signing is pushed to the sidelines not for playing badly, but because the team no longer has time for him to shine, every beautiful story that began with so much promise can fade away in an instant. In truth, the story of Alexander Isak at Liverpool has become one of the most perplexing problems Arne Slot is facing right now. The way he arrived at Anfield, with a £125 million price tag and the reputation of a striker who scored 21 goals in the Premier League last season, ignited enormous excitement across the red half of the city. Everyone thought Slot had finally found his modern forward, technical, intelligent in movement, and capable of leading the line in the post-Salah era. But just over a month later, what people are seeing is a completely different Isak. No goals in the Premier League, no assists, and none of the sharp instincts that once made him one of the most feared strikers in England during his time at Newcastle. His jogging gait, his heavy first touches, and his tame finishes, like gentle passes back to the goalkeeper, have left fans asking, is this still the same Isak we once knew? There are excuses to be made. He barely had a preseason, didn't have time to adapt to Slot's intense training, and hasn't yet developed chemistry with those around him. But those excuses are starting to sound worn out. Because if you look at Hugo Ekitike, supposedly just the plan B, he's adapted as if he's been here all along. While Isak struggles to even turn between two center-backs, Ekitike already knows how to draw defenders out, create space for teammates, and even score on his own. The story is turning awkward. Arne Slot is caught between two difficult choices: keep Isak on the pitch and watch the attack lose its bite, or bench him, which would mean undermining the board's faith after they broke the bank to sign him. The problem is, Liverpool no longer have the luxury of time or patience for costly experiments. When Ekitike is producing results, when Wirtz, though dimmer, still contributes to ball circulation, Isak has become the weak link in the pressing chain. And on social media, Liverpool fans are already beginning to sigh. Some say he looks exhausted, as if he's still playing for his old team. Others are more bitter. £125 million for a striker who doesn't press and hasn't scored a single goal. That's a hard pill to swallow. Slot, for his part, is still trying to protect his player, insisting that Isak just needs more time. But everyone knows, at Liverpool, time is a luxury. A few more goalless games, and Isak won't just lose his place in the lineup. He'll lose the faith that all of Anfield once placed in him. In truth, if we're being fair, Isak is in a much more forgiving position than Florian Wirtz. He's already familiar with the Premier League. He's thrived in the intense environment of Newcastle United, and he's even carried their attack through an entire season. That experience means Isak understands English football, the defensive style, the pressing patterns of centre-backs, and how to exploit space in high-tempo matches. Florian Wirtz, on the other hand, comes from the Bundesliga, a league built more on control and creativity than on raw physicality. Transitioning into Liverpool's high press, space-limited system has often made him look lost. That's why, in theory, Isak should be the one adapting faster, making an earlier impact. He can drop deep, play alone up front, or link up with the wingers, all roles he mastered at Newcastle. But Liverpool under Arne Slot isn't Newcastle under Eddie Howe. At Newcastle, Isak still pressed, but he had more freedom and fewer tactical constraints. That's why his take-off phase has been longer than expected. Maybe he just needs more time to understand what Slot truly wants. To find rhythm with players like Florian Wirtz or Ekitike. But if this adjustment period drags on for a few more months, it will no longer be called adaptation, it will be labeled a tactical failure. A striker like Isak, when he's not scoring, inevitably becomes the lightning rod for criticism, even when the issue isn't entirely with him, but with how Liverpool's system uses him. From the outside, people still believe Isak can bounce back. He has the quality, the experience, and the composure that few young forwards possess. But in football, belief doesn't last forever. If Ekitike keeps performing and Wirtz starts to click, Isak's slow start will quickly be seen as regression. Patience is possible, but not endless. Especially when we're talking about two of the most expensive signings in Premier League history. That's why, in the end, the only way for both of them to silence the doubts is simple: they have to deliver.